Well, European airlines have called for a review of the flight ban that's in place across the continent.
2 carriers have made test flights through the ash clouds that continue to cover Europe and say their planes suffered no damage. For more, we're joined now by London reporter Rachel Brown. Now, Rachel, good morning. First of all, this volcano is still erupting.
It is, and commuters won't like to hear what I'm about to tell them, but it could be erupting for another month, according to volcanologists. Now, that's not saying its fury will remain the same for a month, but that it will continue to spurt ash out into the air. Now, volcanologists have previously said even when it stops doing this, it could be several days, maybe weeks, for that ash and grit that's up there at the moment to dissipate.
So there must be tens of thousands of people now in the UK whose travel plans have been affected, hundreds of thousands probably. What is the economic and social cost on the ground?
Huge, Joe. Airlines say they're losing $1.7 million an hour. The costs are just phenomenal. They're bleeding at a time that the aviation industry is already in the woes as it is. Now, people are angry, they're frustrated, they know that, better to be safe than sorry, but they're spending their holidays on terminal waiting room chairs. I've seen families camped out in the terminals and very frustrated scenes also I've seen in Portsmouth at the ferry terminal there. Hundreds of people are gathered trying to get a ferry out. They've been there for days. And then they were met by bureaucratic red tape in terms of immigration issues and people wanting to see passports. And you can see these scenes there are starting to get a bit tense. I think maybe because I'm a journalist and I look at large groups of agitated people, you just think things could go a bit pear-shaped here. But tensions are certainly starting to escalate and there is no sign of restrictions being eased anytime soon.
And so we've had a couple of airlines now do test flights through the ash cloud. How many of those have there been, and is there any suggestion that those airlines will go ahead with flights regardless?
France, Germany and Holland have done test flights, and British Airways has also just done one which has landed not long ago that's come back from Cardiff. Now, they say they have landed unscathed, and 2 umbrella groups that represent the European airlines and airports have written to the regulator saying there's no problems. You really should reassess this situation. They're worried it's another case, they say, of what we saw during swine flu, that there was all this hype and fears, but in the end, a lot of it turned out to be hot air. They've put that to the European Union. The European Union said, in Europe, we do things by the rules. It's better to be safe than sorry. The union is holding an emergency meeting tomorrow, as is the UK government, who've mentioned that it could look into requisitioning navy boats and merchant vessels and setting up a hub, they called it, in the south of Spain, to then get people to the channel and use those vessels to get them home again.
So the regulator at this stage is not giving any sign that the ban is going to be lifted anytime soon, despite those test flights?
No, and this is a day-to-day thing, Joe. They'll look at it again tomorrow. As it stands, though, there won't be any flights for 24 hours. The European Union said that 50% of flights, that was a UK figure I just gave you, 50% of flights over Europe may fly tomorrow, but we have to wait and see.
And finally, who's footing the bill for all the food and accommodation?
That is supposed to be the airlines under EU rules, but commuters have found a very different situation when they've called up. They've been told it's an act of God, there's nothing that we can do about it. And at the same time, imports and exports are also suffering. Crates of fish and foods that are due to go out is starting to be a bit on the nose, I understand, at Heathrow Airport. And terminals that usually bring in things like fruit and pharmaceuticals are empty. I also heard a story today of a 2-year-old girl waiting on a bone marrow transplant, and she's in ready for chemotherapy, and that transplant, the bone marrow, won't be arriving anytime soon.
Well, Rachel Brown in London, thanks for that.